Man, if this not super exciting, welcome. Come on in. Join us. Little checkerboard chatter. This is episode 1 here on the VolReport, Rivals website for all of your coverage when it comes to Tennessee sports. Salutations. My name is Tyler Ivens. The name below probably gave that away. The gentleman who is to whatever side you're viewing this on. It always gets super confusing when you do the podcasting and you do the YouTubes. It's Noah Taylor. It's a guy you need to get used to knowing and get used to seeing and hearing a lot from. Listen, it's Wednesday. It's ahead of, let's be frank, if you're watching this and you're watching this because you're a Tennessee fan and you've been a Tennessee fan for some time, let's go ahead and just get things started right out of the gate. Let me ask you a question. You, the viewer, you, the listener, you joining us in whatever format or fashion. When was the last time this game meant something? And I mean, really, really meant something. You know what I'm talking about. I'm a 36-year-old. You got to go back to the 90s. You got to talk about middle schools. Noah, no matter how long you've been around this program, whether it's been recent, whether it's been long-standing, whatever it may be, we ain't got to have the numbers beside the name tell us how biggie of a matchup this is at Neyland Stadium at 3:30. Man, good evening. I hope you're doing well in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I'm very excited for to be on here. You know, your first guest. I don't know how many people declined first before I got on, but
when I told them this was going to be live broadcast on OnlyFans, they were like, OnlyFans is not. Dude, I'm telling you, things can get weird sometimes on the internet, so I'm glad we had a chance to clear that up. Look where we're at right now, man. Tennessee already has their open date. They're 5-0. I have on many formats mentioned I just didn't like where the open date was. You get started and then you stop all of a sudden, but then you take a peek at where Cedric Tillman is, and we'll get into that. Hendon Hooker gets roughed up in the Florida game. We'll get into that. It seemed that things happened at the right time. It turns into a butt whooping, any meeny miny mo with the Tiger. Here's Tennessee now, Noah. They're 5-0, man, and the fans are absolutely electrified. Are you noticing some of the same things that I'm noticing when it comes to you being on campus and covering this program?
Oh, yeah, man, it's crazy. You know, I go back to the Florida game and the week that you're going to press conferences and things like that up until the Friday when College Game Day was setting up on campus. The vibe here is just – it's nothing I've experienced yet. You know, I was a student for 4 years. You know, Butch was the coach when I started. Pruitt was when I left, and nothing has matched this atmosphere. Obviously, winning has had a lot to do with that for Tennessee. There's still been some big games. Obviously, you're going to get up for Florida, for Alabama, but it's different when you're sitting on the cusp of the top 5 right now. You're 5-0. You're playing as well as anybody in the country.
Sure. And
you've got a legitimate shot to break this streak against historically your biggest rival. So yeah, the vibe is just it's something different. And I know that Florida atmosphere a couple Saturdays ago was crazy. I just can't imagine what Saturday will be like.
It'll be an insane asylum. It will be not to like provide history lessons. I have a feeling it's going to be Roman-esque, like the Colosseum.
Yeah.
And people will not leave until they get what they want. We won't have to go into detail what exactly they want. Pretty much know what that is when it comes to wins and losses. Let's stay with that for a second. You were talking about just the vibe, just kind of everything, how it's feeling right now on campus. Are you getting that from the players when you have a chance to one-on-one, when you're in a group setting, when you're around some of the personnel? Are those similar, different? What are you picking up on, okay, this isn't Akron, this isn't Bowling Green, this isn't Ball State, this has got a big fight feel?
Yeah, you know, I was thinking about that today. Just the way these guys handle these situations, you know, that it's really unfamiliar territory for them, but they've handled it really the same way every week. I feel like they've done a good job of that. They're not giving Alabama any bulletin board material. They didn't do it for Florida. They're confident. I think you can feel that confidence from Josh Heupel, from the assistants, from the players, and these press conferences during the week. But you know, they preach about it. You know, we're preparing the same. We're preparing the same. Now, behind closed doors, I don't know. You know, it's Alabama, so it's hard to prepare for Akron the same way you're preparing for Alabama. But they're definitely giving that feel like, man, they mean it. You know, every game is going to be the same. We're going to prepare the same way. They're being humble about it, but they're being confident at the same time. That's kind of what I've kind of got from the players and the coaches these past few weeks.
You say the coaches. I want to specifically take a peek at just – we don't have to name any because it's just a collection of a whole.
Yeah.
The one thing I don't think it's talked about enough and needs to be highlighted is what Josh Heupel's been able to do, not only X's and O's and offensively. Look, we could talk about the offense for hours, but keeping this team so focused. And look, he's not like some coaches who make you delete your Twitter accounts before the football season starts. I've covered programs where you can't have any social, no Instas, no Twitters, no Snapchats. They want you completely off the grid. Josh Heupel doesn't go to those extremes, but he understands that those challenges also come, that you can't read necessarily your own press clippings. How do you believe, in your opinion, Noah, in your time around this team, how do you believe Josh Heupel has done such a fantastic job of succeeding, of keeping these guys focused on game after game after game?
I think the biggest thing he does is he doesn't, like you said, the coaches that will go to these links to keep guys off social media, to keep them from seeing what's being said. Absolutely. I mean, you go back to Saban with the rat poison stuff. Mm-hmm. I think that Coach Heupel, and he said this himself, but he said it going back to the Florida game, embrace this, embrace this stage, enjoy the moment you're on. But at the same time, keep focused on what we can control, what our standard is, what our expectations are. I think they've done a really good job. Now, Alabama this weekend will be able to tell for sure, but Florida, a ton of media hype for that game. This is like that on steroids, obviously, but there was so much attention given to them that week, and they embraced it. They seemed to really enjoy that stage and didn't let it get to them. And I think that, they're taking on that same personality that Josh Heupel has. I think what's really cool is he's a guy that's played at this stage. Obviously head coaches have experience playing football. He's played it at a big level. I mean, he's won a national championship. He's been part of a number one team as a player. I think that really helps that he's able to carry that over to as a head coach, and players feed off it too.
All right, so let's get into the details, really just kind of the meat of what's happening this weekend. Josh Heupel, on the SEC teleconference earlier today, of course, people want updates first on Jalen McCullough. They do not have an update on Jalen McCullough or whether he's going to be available Saturday for this game against Alabama. This is now in the administration's hands. Josh Heupel also went on to say that they have had conversations with both parties involved, all parties involved. That's going to be on a later date, as well as Cedric Tillman. And this I found to be a little intriguing. Josh Heupel said that they would not put Cedric Tillman on the football field until he's 100%. Now, this is just you and I talking here. I'm not a doctor. I don't have degrees on my wall. I didn't do that. But I know many doctors, and I've chatted with many doctors and just had basic conversations with them. One particular doctor, I asked him, I said, are you familiar with the tightrope surgery that is performed on high ankle sprains to try to alleviate or expedite the process? And he told me the last he did his surgery was in the 90s. Science has improved. Obviously, there's so many different, cryo and all this other stuff they can do now. And these kids are just freak athletes between 18 and 22. But when we talked, I asked him, I said, give me a rough estimate on when you think Cedric Tillman will be ready. And he said, you could possibly get him back on the field October 22nd. But because the opponent's UT Martin, why would you even risk it? If you're asking me, and this is just me at my expertise, at my level, at my age, I think realistically the first time you could see him on the football field would be Kentucky. Now, Alabama, you could attempt to have that conversation and push him, but he's going to be nowhere close to 100%. If I take what he has told me, and then I take what I hear from Josh Heupel today, I'm not saying I know the answer, but I'm under the assumption right now that it's very, very, very questionable that you're going to see Cedric Tillman on the football field Saturday.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, it's just, and again, like you said, I'm no doctor. I don't have any insight as to whether or not.
Dr. Taylor, tell me more about ankle sprains and how the ankle swells up with ligaments.
Right, absolutely. He, like he said, 100%. One thing that was interesting this week was, he kind of alluded to one reason he got that surgery was to be ready for this game. Right. But the fact that we're at this point in the week, obviously he's not going to give anything away at this point. Same with Nick Saban and Bryce Young. But it's kind of interesting to keep an eye on. We'll see where that goes. But yeah, it's kind of hard to believe he'll be out there that quickly. But at the same time, you got to be feeling pretty confident if you're Tennessee's offense with the way these receivers have stepped up to this point.
Without question, Jalen Hyatt, and we're going to get into a lot of those. I want to stay with the injury report quickly. AC joint for Bryce Young. This is a injury that, simply put, there isn't really any kind of procedure you can do like a tightrope ankle surgery to expedite the process. This can simply just be taken care of with rest. What are your thoughts? Not holding you 2 feet to the fire, but right now there are a lot of people who believe that if you're talking about the severity of an AC joint strain, nobody knows except the doctors and the staff at Alabama.
Yeah, on Bryce Young, I think that is that who you're talking about? there?
100%. Yeah, the AC joint on Bryce. I should have been more specific.
No, you're good, man. You're good. Yeah, with Bryce Young, I was talking to Tyler Mansfield, our publisher, the other night after we left the LSU game, and we got back to our hotel. First thing we did was flip on Texas A&M in Alabama, and I said, they on the broadcast they said Bryce Young was dressed out, he'd be ready in an emergency situation, and I told Tyler, I said it's kind of interesting that Alabama's playing an SEC West opponent. They're saving their quarterback when he could be ready for Tennessee next week. That shows you how far Tennessee's kind of come. But man, A&M that was a hairy situation for Alabama, and we didn't see Bryce Young at all. I mean, if you're going to put him in at all, that would have been the game to do it if you thought he was good to go. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see how things are going this week. I know Nick Saban, of course, is keeping that pretty quiet on what they're going to do. He said today on the teleconference that he had no update on Bryce Young's status at this point. But obviously a huge change there. If he does play, if he doesn't play, that would be big for Tennessee, obviously. But if he does, how well is he going to play? What's he going to play like with that injury?
This is just me, a guy who's been covering the SEC for some time. I'll eat my hat if Bryce Young doesn't play Saturday against Tennessee. I'm serious. Like, some of these things are smoke and mirrors. I get it. You're right. They rolled the dice of not having Bryce Young play against Texas A&M. Hopes that it wouldn't be similar to what they had last year. They got nipped last year. This year they rolled the dice again. Almost got bit a second time, but it played out in their favor. Bryce Young doesn't get nicked. He doesn't harm that injury. He doesn't blow that out of proportion. Gets that injury even more severe than it already is. I got to ask you about this defense, because that leads me to the next question. Hendon Hooker right now, who many people, whenever you first started talking about Heisman Trophy in January, I only know a select few people who I'm very close with, who said, I had one particular individual who told me Hendon Hooker is going to win the Heisman Trophy this year. Now, let's see how it kind of plays about. Other people weren't ready to go that far because of Stroud at Ohio State, Young perhaps repeating, and there were so many other options out there as well. Noah, he has gone in 5 weeks alone, 9th, 7th, 6th, 4th, and now he's 2nd. He has leapfrogged both Caleb Williams at USC as well as the aforementioned Bryce Young. Right now, what are your thoughts on Hendon Hooker, Heisman Trophy, and Hendon Hooker, the Heisman campaign? Because if there's any game where people want to pay attention to you and you need that New York moment, brother, name a better stage than what's going to happen 3:30 on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, you could count me in that camp in January that would have said, I think he's really good.
Yeah, the guy who said it to me, I said, okay.
Absolutely. I mean, he's good. He's a really good quarterback. Heisman, we'll see. But, man, I'm 100% a believer, 5 games into the season. I mean, he's already had a few moments. You go back to one big one I think about a lot in the Florida game is the third down run, or the run where he broke away from defenders and was able to, set Tennessee up in the red zone. Yeah. I mean, that was a huge play in that game. There's a lot of huge plays in that game he had a hand in, but that one kind of sticks out to me as a Heisman moment. Like you said, this stage, this weekend, all the attention this game is getting. There's not going to be a better game. I don't know. I can't say that for sure now, but on paper right now, there's not going to be a better game Saturday. That game will be, everybody will be tuned into that at 3:30. Huge chance for him to. The
other undefeated games, Oklahoma State, TCU.
Yeah.
I dare somebody outside of Fort Worth, Texas, and Stillwater, Oklahoma, to tell me they're not going to be watching what's happening in Knoxville. I get your point, though. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it's huge opportunity for him. Now I know, obviously, that's not what's on his mind. On his mind, it's just beating Alabama. But man, this is also a rivalry game where legends are made. I know that's a little cliche, but I mean, it's a chance for him to really. What a perfect opportunity, a perfect opponent for him to really solidify that campaign.
I've watched Hendon this year, and even times whenever he has said, I didn't even feel like I put on my best performance the LSU game. I had to just chuckle. I mean, he had a phenomenal game, and he felt like he wasn't at his best. On top of that, you look at the big moments, as you already mentioned, against Florida, and then the way that he led the comeback with Cedric Tillman. I mean, it was 18 targets. 18 times he targeted Cedric Tillman, but he got him back in the game. And they're unscathed right now. And we're getting to a point in time, Noah, where we're having that conversation. And for those of you out there who don't know what that conversation is, it's not about the national championship. It's not about what if with Alabama's. we're having that conversation where anytime a quarterback is starting to exceed expectations, they're starting to get compared to that guy.
Yeah.
And can he be the second coming of this particular instance? What have you seen in Hendon Hooker this year up to date, and where that could be when he leaves his legacy baton here at the University of Tennessee? This is probably a good question for me to ask in reset again next week after the Bama result. But when you carve up Florida first time, 2 of the last 16, 17, this is a good time to start.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what he'd have to do, Saturday, I think the biggest thing, and this is pretty obvious, but the fact that he doesn't turn the ball over is just insane to me. To be this far into his tenure at Tennessee, I mean, he's essentially been the starter for 2 years now. He came in early last year. I know he didn't start the season. To still be on that streak. And he's throws a touchdown pass Saturday, which is a very good chance he will, at least one. He's going to tie Heath Schuler for a program record for 18 straight games with a touchdown pass. I mean, yeah, his legacy is already – he's in the record book at Tennessee. There's nothing that's going to take him out of that. But, beating Alabama on this stage, having another game – I thought the same thing against LSU when he said that in that press conference. Well, this wasn't – I didn't play the best of my ability. Are you kidding me?
He's pointed out a few times the ball has kind of gotten away from him. It's kind of carrying a little bit. But, that just shows you what kind of a Picasso artist he is. Because he's like nitpicking to make sure every ear, every finger, every kind of flower has detail to it. And you got to respect a guy who focuses on his game very professionally. And he's kind of that OCD quarterback. That's a compliment.
Oh, for sure. It's the way, I think he had like 239 yards, 2 touchdown passes, no turnovers, or interceptions Saturday. I know he got hit, sacked a few times, but there's most quarterbacks in the country would have killed for that performance. If you're a Tennessee fan and you're hearing your guy say that, or if you're Tennessee's coaching staff and you're hearing your guy say that, that's it blows you away. That's something you want to hear. He's not settling for anything. There's a lot of Tennessee quarterbacks the last however long, decade this kind of has gone on at Tennessee that would love to have some of the stats he's had. It would have helped them a lot. He's doing it every single game.
Hendon Hooker, what he's able to do, average yards per game, just a neck over 300. And now you've got an Alabama defense that ranks one of the best in the country. Something has to give. That's kind of that whole, immovable object, irresistible force, all that noise. It can be cliche all you want. I expect you to be completely honest up front, what you've seen. You've watched plenty of Alabama. You've watched plenty of Tennessee. What do you kind of see the play out being between these two? Because listen, Tennessee, they've lost 15 consecutive games, this Alabama team. Go back and look the last 15 years. Do you know what was the highest point projection that they put out in that 15-year loss? Last year, 24 points. 15 straight losses. Most points they've scored a single game, 24-point last. Okay, so you got to top that. Josh Heupel has never won a college football game as a coach that he hasn't scored at least 30 points in a game. That's some of those gambling things you learn. Something's got to give. That they have marked 24 against Bama. 30's got to where they be. This is the best defense they've faced. How do you think it plays out come Saturday?
Well, I kind of go back to last year, and that game was a little bit crazy. It was a lot crazy because Tennessee was with them every step of the way for 3.5 quarters. Absolutely. It was crazy. That final score was just absolutely no indication of how that game went. Sure. So they proved they could score on them last year. This offense could. I think this offense is even better now, even without Cedric Tillman right now. I think they'll be able to score again. I think they'll be able to match that 24. As good as Alabama's defense is, and like you said, this is their biggest challenge of the season to this point. There's really nothing close that they've faced.
And you could argue for the defense in Tuscaloosa. This is the best offense they've faced.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like you said, something's got to give. It's two, really good offense, really good defense going at each other. I think 31, you score more than that, they've got a chance. I think Tennessee gets 30 plus, it's their game. I think they win it. If they get somehow, it's a huge test, but if they get in that match, where you got to match the score, like they kind of did with Florida, like they did with Pitt. It did with LSU last week. Obviously, the special teams helped set the tone in that early. But if you get in that situation, I just, and especially with Bryce Young out, or if he's limited at all, I think it's gonna be hard for Alabama to keep up with them in that. It may it could be 3-point game, touchdown game. It'll be close. Right. I'm not saying Tennessee will blow them out, But I think if they get them into that groove, which is what they do so well at, with a hurt quarterback or backup quarterback, I think it's Tennessee's game.
I'm going to put you on the spot here. A trivia question. That's the beauty about doing this with me, Noah. So bear with me. Tennessee, 100% scoring in the red zone this year. All right. There are only 4 programs in college football as of today that are perfect, guaranteed once they get in the red zone to at least come out with 3. Clemson, Ohio State, Tennessee, and this SEC school. I'll literally Venmo you $50 the second I hit in broadcast if you get this right. You get one guess, and I'm putting you on the timer. 5, 4,
Ole Miss.
3. Okay, that's a good guess. You ready for this? You ready for me to rock your socks?
Oh, yeah.
Vanderbilt.
Oh,
no, okay. You don't even start with me. No.
As soon as Ole Miss left my lips, I said it's got to be somebody more
exactly
out there. Yeah.
I want to talk about Heupel just a little bit, just because how efficient he is. Billy Napier is making boneheaded calls in that Florida game. You need to go for an extra point, but there's 2, and then he calls that timeout before Jalen Hyatt makes a Sports Center play. Just boneheaded after boneheaded move. And I'm a guy who enjoyed watching Sun Belt football. I've seen him at Louisiana. He doesn't make those type of calls. Brian Kelly's going to the locker room last week and literally says, we just got out-coached the first 30 minutes. Yeah. What do you think has happened Josh Heupel is doing? It's not voodoo. It's not some Halloween magic ghouls. What do you do you think the offense is difficult to handle? What do you think he's doing that is making other coaches kind of get out of their comfort zone? Because listen, let's be real. You're not going to hear that come from Nick Saban. Like, well, shucks, he just outcoached me in the first. If you think the offense is difficult to guard, what do you think he's doing that are making coaches, A, get out of their comfort zone, and B, just do the most abnormal things when they get on the football field against Tennessee? Because I don't have an answer to it. I don't know if you do either.
Yeah, I think it's just the system. I mean, it's like I said a second ago with the games they've been in where they're trying to, they get up 2 scores. There's not a lot of teams on their schedule or even in the country even that are going to be able to match them back and forth, especially when their defense plays as well as it did against LSU. Right. I think a lot of that has to do with that. I think that's the reasoning. I think that's why a guy like Billy Napier is like, man, I can't afford to wait on this. I got to do it now. I can't afford to punt here. I can't afford to take a field goal here. I've got to keep scoring, keep scoring to keep up with these guys.
First quarter going for it on 4th down. We're not playing PlayStation up in the bonus room, Noah.
It's crazy. I like you said. I mean, it blows guys away. They don't know how to handle it and gets them flustered very early, which works in Tennessee's advantage too.
I look at this game, simply put, win or lose. The fact that Tennessee is getting this national attention, the great story of Hendon Hooker and the chances that he would have never played college football again, and he's gotten that second life. Guys like Jalen Hyatt, and this is where we bring in those kind of just understudies who are starting to make a name for themselves. Jalen Hyatt, you meet with the media. He talks about how he needs positivity and how he's not letting himself get too grounded. He goes out and puts 20, 25 pounds of good muscle on. And all of a sudden, he goes from a guy who people are questioning if he'll ever make that leap. Now, Velus Jones has been drafted to Chicago. Will he ever make that leap? Not only has he made that leap, he's leading Tennessee in a lot of offensive categories. Brew McCoy is doing his part to try to keep the truck moving. Ramel Keaton is as well. The Cedric Tillman injury has not looked as alarming because of what these guys have done the last couple of weeks. And if you want to talk about a guy who is just humbled the whole time, Jalen Hyatt, my man, I don't know who's working with him behind the scenes, but he's saying all the right things.
Yeah, I think that's, it's amazing to hear really from anybody on this team, but especially him. He's a guy that totally gives credit to everybody else, for what he does. Like the other day, I thought the coolest thing, I think it was last week, was when he talked about playing for Hendon Hooker. He wants to go out there and make plays for his quarterback. Right. That says a lot about Hendon Hooker, obviously. But, man, a guy playing as well as he is right now, after the year he had last season, it would be easy to sit there and take all that credit, take all the publicity for all
Absolutely.
of that. But he's not doing it. I mean, he's like Hendon in a way, where he's not satisfied at all. No matter how many yards he puts up, no matter how many scores he's going to put up, he's one of the best receivers in the country right now. And yet the guy acts like he could be better every week. It's really amazing how these guys on this team are like that.
This Tennessee team defensively in the last couple of minutes that I'll keep you here. When you see this team defensively, so much has been praised about their ability to stop the run. Noah, if we're going to talk about the ruby red blemishes, we got to talk about the warts as well. This team still ranks fourth at the bottom when it comes to the passing game. Jalen McCullough, we already learned today from Coach Heupel that they don't have an update. That's another man they're down. Warren Burrell's already been ruled out for the season the last couple of days, week ago plus. It didn't happen against Keyshawn Butte like a lot of people thought it was going to be. But depending on who your quarterback is, there are still weapons. There's still 5-stars out there who can make you pay. Is this the game where perhaps maybe the camel's back finally just has too many straws added to it? Perhaps not, but I think Alabama can smell weakness, and I think they're going to attack that as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of that obviously, has to do with who the quarterback is for them. But heck, I mean, Anthony Richardson went into the Florida-Tennessee game, coming off some pretty abysmal performances against Kentucky, against South Florida. He comes in and has a career day against this Tennessee secondary. So even if Alabama is going to have to run a guy like Milroe out there, that's something that he may be able to exploit. It's definitely in the depth issues right now. You got Warren Burrell, who's out for the season as well. McCullough's gone, or we can assume he might not play Saturday.
Sure.
He probably won't play Saturday. It's definitely an area that they can exploit. And you mentioned Tennessee's run defense. That's going to be a big challenge too against a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, that's going to be huge for them as well up front. But yeah, I mean, if there's a weakness on this team, it's definitely been the secondary. They're going to have to really step up with some depth issues there.
Things are just so different depending on who's going to be starting for Alabama. And obviously that's low hanging fruit, even making that comment. My question to you is this. You already mentioned you went to the university here. All right. We both live in the area. Do you think realistically Tennessee has a chance to beat Alabama?
Absolutely. I think this year. Yeah. I mean, if past years, it's obviously, been different, but
I don't mean to cut you off, but why? Instead of just the whole, it sounds good. ESPN and Kirk Herbstreit said, why? Because there have been plenty of times where there have been Tennessee fans who are like, yep, I feel it. This is the year. Why?
I think a lot of it has to do with just the difference in this staff. I think that obviously comes down to that. I mean, we've seen, look, 2016 was a top 10 matchup, believe it or not, Tennessee and Alabama. Tennessee ended up, winning 8 games and playing in the Music City Bowl that year. They got blown out in that game. So I think the difference is just the confidence in this coaching staff. I just can't see them coming out and all the work that they've done going back to last season to this point, the 5-0 start. I don't see them letting this stage be too big for them and letting that game get out of hand early. I'm not saying that can't happen. Alabama, they're not going to play bad all year. And they've looked beatable, but these Nick Saban teams, they've got a knack for looking that way and then just being completely dominant when you don't expect it. And this is one of those games where a lot of people are expecting Tennessee to not just hang with them, but even beat them. And, I think that's something you got to that comes into play as well. I think that right now it's just the coaching staff is just a lot of confidence in the team and the players.
I have friends who have not attended a Tennessee home football game since COVID for personal reasons, whatever it may be, health-related restrictions, and they're coming to town for this because they expect to see history, something they haven't seen since Eric Ainge was the starting quarterback here in Knoxville. Alabama ranks second and third down defense. Tennessee does a very good job. They're in the middle 40s to high 30s in third down percentages. If there is a key to the game, menu, tell the tape, generic, so cliche, everything everybody does, just another podcast thing. What is it to you? I mean, what is inside the guts of this body that makes Tennessee tick and they have a realistic chance to beat Alabama?
I think it comes down to the defense again. I mean, I think that with the performance they had last week, if you can match that, they've done – you look at LSU's got some talented backs. Florida's got some talented backs. They did a really good job of stopping the run. They've done a pretty good job of stopping mobile quarterbacks. I think if their defensive line can stop Gibbs, can disrupt whoever the quarterback is back there, mess up his throw, his passing, his timing, not let him escape. I think it's going to come down to that. Obviously, there's some obvious answers. Hendon Hooker having the game of his life, that would be obviously key. The receivers playing even better than they've played already. That would be key. Special teams, who's coming off a really good performance. playing really well and creating some turnovers there or some plays there. But I think it comes down to that defensive line and just how they've played to this point.
Jalen Milroe or Bryce Young. You got to be encouraged based on how they kept Jaden Daniels in the pocket for 4 quarters in Baton Rouge. But I still believe that there could be issues at hand when it comes to keeping a quarterback inside the pocket. For the record, and I'm not usually a guy who is a record guy, I think Tennessee keeps this game very close. Do they win? I'm not ready to go that far, but I think that this is, hey, look, there's a reason why this line immediately dropped from 10 down to 7.5, and now it's been fluctuating between 8 and 7.5. Noah, you're going to be joining us frequently here on Checkerboard Chatter throughout the entirety of the season. Sam's going to go for a lot of the coverage that we're going to have for you, as well as during basketball and baseball season. Listen, you got to be able to follow my guy, Noah Taylor. He's going to be keeping you up to date with all things that you need to know when it comes to the injury reports, the up-to-date things for the University of Tennessee, when it comes to probabilities, as well as the latest. Look, there's a lot of things that are happening right now on campus. The athletic department as a whole is just absolutely just flourishing. It doesn't matter if it's not football. Lady Vol basketball is about to have a huge season. Men's basketball right now, Joe Lenardi, they projected to be a 3 seed this year, right before the season tips off. And we're just less than 30 days away from that occurring. Baseball, Tony Vitello, that softball, what Karen Weekly's been able to do. Listen, if you need the coverage, if you need the latest, look, the people are here. You know, some of the people work a little bit harder. I just try to look pretty and let Noah Taylor be the monster who flexes, kind of like Hogan at WrestleMania. But keep the notifications on, subscribe, whatever you need from these guys, whatever you need from us, we've got you covered here. VolReport's going to be with you 24/7, 365. We'll see you guys on the message boards. Noah, take care of your business, man. I'm sure I took you away for some dinner. Perhaps maybe you're doing a model airplane. I don't know what you do during your downtime, man, but I appreciate a few minutes of your time, and we'll catch up with you in the near future. All right.
That sounds good, buddy. Appreciate it, Tyler.
It's Noah Taylor. I'm Tyler Ivens. This has been the Vol Report and Checkerboard Chatter. We'll catch you guys around.